In this episode, we're talking about finance for couples.
Episode number 19, talking about couples.
19 already?
Yeah, 19 episodes. Today we're going to be talking about couples and their finances. We know couples, when it comes to decisions, don't always agree. Shocker.
No.
Finances are a big part of a relationship. Often there can be disagreements or just ideas around how things should be done at home as it relates to money.
Yeah.
Wanted to talk to you about some of the things that couples should be thinking about or aware of when they're making decisions together.
Yeah, the first thing that I would say is really important is that couples who plan together tend to stay together. So you need to set goals with each other. It's not a good idea to have separate goals that the other one doesn't know about. So the first thing you should do is sit down and have a conversation about what's important and what you want to accomplish, both individually and as a couple. It's not every goal is combined. But each of you should know about what the other finds important to them.
Yeah, and be aware of those other goals.
Exactly. The second thing I'd recommend is that with those conversations that you're having together, it's a good idea to make those plans together because you can maximize out on your opportunities. Debt is a really good example of this. Now, a lot of people will go into a planning situation and say, well, that debt's your debt. You need to pay that off, especially because lots of people think about debt differently. Some people are more okay with debt and some people aren't. The fact of the matter is when you're a couple, especially when you're married, that debt is all of your debt. And so what's the best thing to do is to plan for that debt together, especially with debt elimination strategies, so working together. Other things involve tax efficiency. So couples that do their planning work together can take advantage of certain tax efficiencies. As an example, this is something we just did with a client recently, where one of the spouses had most of the assets just through their own accumulation prior to being married. So they had most of the assets, and the other spouse had very few assets actually in terms of their investments. And so what we decided to do was a spousal loan. So you can actually, as one spouse, can loan the other spouse assets at a prescribed rate. It's allowed by CRA. You have to charge something, and the prescribed rate is 1% right now. And as long as you charge that rate, the other spouse can invest that money on their own, and therefore you're spreading out the assets, ultimately spreading out the tax brackets between the two of you and saving money on taxes. So there's lots of other strategies like that, but those are just examples of some things to consider in maximizing your opportunities.
Great.
The third option, or the third thing you should consider, is tracking your spending. A lot of couples will say there's a saver and a spender. That's not necessarily true. You're both spenders. Both people spend money on what they think is important, and it's just a matter of understanding what your priorities are. Budgeting is generally a bad word with people. They don't like it. They usually think it means that they're going to be limited by something. That's not the case. Really, it's about prioritizing what is important to both of you. So, track your spending, know where your money's going, and really be open and honest about that. Again, secrets are the enemy of a good relationship. So just be open and honest about it, and know where your money's going, and you'll be better off for it. The fourth consideration I'd take if I was in a relationship, which I am, is to always be open.
Maybe not now.
Yeah. But always be open and transparent about your finances. Have good conversations about it. So, making a point to sit down and talk about things is really, really important. Yeah. Again, I've said it already in this video, but secrets are the enemy of a good relationship, and so it's not a good enough or it's not a good excuse to say, well, what they don't know won't hurt them. That's a terrible approach to it because eventually they might find out, and that's bad for relationships. So I would encourage every couple to be really open about their finances, good and bad, and make sure that you're all aware of it so that you can plan for it. The next consideration I'd make is investing together. Lots of couples think that there's a conservative person, and there's lots of couples where there's somebody who's more conservative and somebody who's more risk tolerant. I would make the argument that you should be still investing together, but talk about it in a different manner, which is align your investments to different time frames. So, for example, if you have a shorter term goal as a couple, something that you need in the next couple of years, you don't want to be taking a lot of risks in that with that money. You don't have a lot of volatility in that investment. Whereas with longer term investments, you're going to be able to afford a little bit more volatility into it. You're going to be able to afford to have a little bit more volatility because you have time to recover in case markets don't work out well or something goes wrong. So I would just encourage everybody, including couples especially, to talk about their goals and their investing in terms of time frames. And keep in mind that your comfort levels are still really important with that. I mean, you can't invest in something that somebody's uncomfortable with. So just make sure you're talking about it in a manner that makes sense. The other thing to consider with that is that people think about money differently. Some people, for some couples or some members in a relationship, money is safety, it's security. Whereas the other couple or the other spouse in the relationship might think about money as more like power. So just be open-minded to that not not thinks the same way as you. And even in a relationship, it doesn't mean that everybody has to think the same way. So just be really open about that. The last principle or last consideration I would say is that take into consideration that you will face tough times financially. So going back to something else I said earlier, which is having good open conversations, is a really good idea. Make sure that you're preparing for emergencies. Make sure that you're preparing for those tough times, because undoubtedly they will come. And so you want to make sure you're prepared for it and that you're able to handle it financially, but also that your relationship is able to handle it and you know what to do.
All of those really good tips as it relates to money between couples. One of the most common questions we're getting around couples and money is joint bank accounts. Should we have joint bank accounts?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's a really personal question actually. There's no one answer to this. What I'm finding today is that more and more people are actually having separate bank accounts, and so they often ask me the question, should we have it joint? Truthfully, it doesn't matter, as long as I'd say that as long as you're having good conversations and know what's going on. In my relationship, as an example, I like having separate bank accounts. Well, we really have separate bank accounts and a joint bank account. So our home expenses come out of our joint account, but we still both have our own individual accounts. And frankly, that's because I don't want to get mad at Sam because she's buying something that I don't agree with, and vice versa. I buy a lot of stuff that she wouldn't want me buying. And so
probably more so you.
Yeah, exactly. So it's for us, it's important to have that separation while we still have a joint account to cover our home expenses. For other people, they like to combine everything together, and that makes them feel more comfortable. Again, this is where I'd say have a good open conversation about it. What works best for you guys is ultimately the best decision there and what makes you most comfortable. So just be really open about it. All right, well, I think that wraps it up for couples and talking about their finances. There's a lot of other things we can go into with this. So, if you do have any questions about what you should do within your relationship as it relates to your finances, please get in touch with us. Send us an email at cgwfamilywealth@nbc.ca. You can go to our website as well. All of our contact information is there, cgwfamilywealth.com. And, we look forward to hearing from you if you have any questions. So with that, let's close it off. Ready?
Aim.
Fire.